Yeah, give me like 30 seconds. Also, please someone confirm if I'm audible and clear again.
We can hear you, yes.
Okay, thank you. Respected panel, let's understand what kind of people are the major stakeholders in this debate, right? And what is the general narrative in the society today, and how, when we do this, when this change is there, or the world we prefer to live in is the world in which is there, then how is this better for everyone in the society, right? Also, like, let's start with what are the narratives in society today, right? Through means of movies, advertisements, books, novels, storybooks, aging from times, right? What is the general idea there, that a man falls for a woman, who and both of them are the best looking person, right? And it's being ratified through movies and other advertisements and stuff, right? That the actor, the main lead, has to be a really macho man with six pack abs, and the actress has to be the most beautiful person on earth, or at least in that movie itself, right? Necessarily, this idea is being delivered to people who are the major viewers, or who are the major consumers of these, right? And they're necessarily the teenagers, right? Who are of a very, very impressionable age, right? Also, people of different ages who think, and over the time, they feel, that this is really normal and this is how it is supposed to be, and how then this idea, when implanted in these brains, this kind of drives people to the idea, that all romantic attractions, or all kind of attractions that happen, should happen between a good looking person with another good looking person, right? Necessarily, how now romantic relationships are driven by, love at first sight, just by external appearance, right? Just by outer appearance, people judge the other person, and like, even in cases say that, I'm in love with the other person, right? We
Point.
necessarily believe that this is very, very irrational. At least let me start my speech. Okay, so like, what kind of romantic relationships and romantic attractions do we want in our world, right? We necessarily want an attraction between two people of any gender, right? Who can actually give each other some sort of emotional comfort, that there's some sort of understanding, so that they can support each other in times when it's needed to, right? So that there's some sort of spiritual connection between these two parties, so that they can actually help each other when they're needed to, right? Because everyone faces lows and highs in their life, and we need someone very at times really special, to celebrate and mourn it with, right? Necessarily, we need someone who isn't on the same level of understanding, and is very similar to us, right? Which does not happen in this case, right? Necessarily, because of this idea, many teenagers, when they fall in relationship, right, it's only because of outer appearance, right? And this does not drag along very long, right? This shatters, and this leads to nothing but some sort of depression or sadness among these people, right? And we have seen many, many instances throughout the globe, where people commit suicides, and like, how this is very, very common in youth today, and also in different people, right? Also, talking about another fact, that how probably a person who is not beautiful according to the standards in the society, when she approaches another man, or he approaches another woman, or any other combination, right? And when they get rejected just because of their external appearance, this causes nothing but, great, great insecurity in that person, right? This leads to nothing but a cycle of sadness and depression, which is very, very hard to overcome, right? And we think that this is very, very unjust, for someone to suffer from something which is so great, only because of something that was never in their control and never their choice, right? And thus we think that, even in such a world where, everyone at least looks same, then such scenarios, such insecurities just for outer and physical appearance will never happen, right? This loss of self-esteem self-esteem, which happens when supposedly I, as a man, fall in love with someone, and she just comes and shames me. Have you seen at yourself in the mirror, or something like that, with some statements, right? She may be very good looking or not, right? But when this happens in personal, or in front of people, right, this leads to nothing but a loss of self-esteem in me, right? And it's very important. Self-love is very, very important in this world, right? Because we all have our own burdens, right? And necessarily we cannot have an issue which is of a nature that cannot be solved very easily, right? And like how this is nothing but a very, very bad idea to very, very, very bad metric to hate yourself, because you cannot help it that much as well, right? Necessarily in a world where everyone looks same, this kind of insecurities never arise, right? Also, Mr. Speaker, understand that what happens. There are some men, who probably have some sort of power, or who are rowdy enough, right? What they do is, like, when they see a good-looking girl, or like a other person, right? They think that they have fallen in love with the other person, and like this leads to nothing but eve teasing, right? How when they see a beautiful girl, they keep stalking her, and this is nothing. This is not just restricted to people, who are probably of these rowdy nature, right? This is happening in almost all universities, in almost all colleges, right? Even people in their teenager, while they're students, be it graduates or postgraduates or school students, right? They feel like stalking the other person, right? Necessarily this is nothing but this idea that the other person is good looking, and I should probably find out more about that other person, and like she's worth stalking and stuff, right? This leads to nothing but a very, very bad, what can be basically called a guy talk, right? But you start to objectify the other person based on their looks, right? I think this happens for all the genders, right? You necessarily just kind of rank these people just on their beauty metric, right? The kind of standards that are set by society, right? Necessarily when I get to know that a group of girls were talking about me, and they like concluded that I am ugly enough for any kind of relationship with any one of them or any other person on this planet. This is nothing but this leads to a lot of loss of self-esteem in me, right? And this is something which I think no person should undergo in their life, right? Because again, stating that why is physical appearance different from other metrics, right? Because understand this, Mr. Speaker, and the panel, sorry, not Mr. Speaker, just a panel, that physical appearance is something which is not in our control, right? But like every other thing, like our personality, and other things that probably may come into picture, right? These are things that are there in our control, and we can actually work on it, and we can improve it, right? And but when we hate ourselves or we hate others just based on physical appearance, this thing is something which cannot be easily tackled. And in our scenario, where relationships will be based on this sort of connection, of course they will be healthier, and this will have better results, which will be pointed out by my DPM. Very proud to propose.
I'd like to thank Speaker for a fine speech. Now I'd like to welcome the op leader to continue the debate. Here.
Give me a minute, sorry.
Whenever you're ready.
All right, got it. Chair, I think what everything brought by the Prime Minister is not only mutually exclusive, but they've never proved to you the absolute urgency for number one, to just standardize having everyone to have the same face. But it's still a harm that accrues in that side is that, number one, people can still judge other people based on their bodies. People can still judge each other based on the clothes that they wear. These are all other discriminations that still happen under their side. And that faces, just having physically same faces, cannot reduce or cannot just absolutely reap the benefits that OG wants. We think that the premise that OG absolutely hinged upon is that they told you in the context of a romantic relationship, people now tend to often get or enter into it because of stigmatization based on good looking and stalking, right? But I think it's very important that the characterization that OO has to emphasize in this motion is that you're just making faces physically the same. So not only are you going to lose your whole identity on that, but like I'll later elaborate that. But I think it's important when you have your faces are the same, like I previously told you, your benefits and harms are mutually exclusive, but you never told us what is the exclusivity when you have physically same faces. You can reduce the harms that OO will bring into this debate, right? We still think objectification can still happen under your world, even much more worse, because now you have a shift of focus on only objectifying the bodies of these people, for example, right? Now that you remove all the other variables, you now have that harm to handle. So I think the harms and the benefits that you want to reap is not mutually exclusive, but the harms are even done more under your side. But if you really want to change, if you really want to make a change, we think that the policy needs to be all human looks the same, right? But if that's not the case, we don't think OGs is going to win because you don't have a crucial change that is going to happen under your world, like structural change. But what is OO going to, and how is OO going to enter this debate? I think it's important that government creates a world with no identity, and it's harder for you to differentiate people. But I also tell you why. We think it's the nature of humans to be attracted to uniqueness when it comes to features and faces. We do not think that this beauty, even if like this beauty standard still exists, we still think also the majority of the human race also acknowledges that beauty standards are very, very subjective. So what you see in the features of a other human being can also be very attractive to you, but it like varies in a whole. So the vulnerable group that you want under your world doesn't necessarily like can be protected. For example, if you have a certain body weight that is like undesirable to the society, we don't see how people are going to come together under your world. But it's also important that in this progressive world, there are so many people embracing beauty on it not being a standard and not a crucial factor when it comes to entering romantic relationship. We feel that now that you have like nothing else to absolutely embrace, we think you don't have a world or a society that is absolutely aware of what is happening on the ground and how is it relatively hurting everyone. But also, why is it in our world, it's still so much better? And we'll take the trade-off of the for example, discrimination of having a prettier faces or an unlikely unattractive face. But I think in OG's world, it emphasizes this discrimination in comparison to ours because we actually embrace the beauty that we have at the end of the day. So when, for example, if you put a characterization that unattractive people are less likely to enter into relationships, we think that is very unlikely. Why? Because the progressiveness of this world of actually emphasizing what is the fundamental root of being in a relationship is, for example, unconditional love or looking beyond your looks and whatnot. We think that the whole embracement of just being who you want to be, rather than having to have your like everyone the same faces, we think that is absolutely harmful. But also in status quo, you have like, for example, your feminist groups that fights beauty standards, and these are the sort of strong emotional support that you get that is galvanized by social media. The society realizes that this sort of standards are very, very harmful. But also like in the Hollywood industry creates a diversity of actors. There's no standard to this anymore because of the progressiveness. But we also think self-love is very, very promoted highly. But the first substantive that is important is that it affects it detrimentally affects your future relationships. Why? When you have everyone having the same faces, anything bad or anything traumatic, for example, your emotional trauma faced for years with your father, or if not your previous relationship with your ex, right? For example, you're being cheated on, mentally manipulated, like physically abused. All of this makes you hinder away from getting into or being into a romantic relationship because of this sort of abusive relationship. Now that you see his face on every other people's face is absolutely horrifying. This will just then be a reminiscence of the same trauma event that this individual had to undergo. And we think that's very, very harmful, right? And we think that is the burden that government has to prove. The harm is that now you create an individual that isolates themselves, absolutely distrust from every society or part of society that happens, because you have this sort of trust issue and reminiscence of the traumatic event that happened in your life. But we also think that it creates a society of individualism and not collectivism. So you do not get a world where like a support system of world where you're going to support your women that are feeling uncomfortable with their body shapes, for example, because at least in under our world we have all of that being galvanized because of this sort of incentive that we do not want a beauty standard in this at the end of the day. But also you are living in a world where people are less likely to want to engage with each other because now you're very self-centric. You don't have any problem to look into yourself and whatnot. We don't think that the process of self-actualization of what is good and what is bad happens on your side. And I think it is going to make you be more reluctant to form any romantic relationship, and hence hinders the whole idea of unity, of having emotional support, for example, under OO's world. But also the process of entering into the relationship under your world is much more like hurtful, because you have to go through so many stages, for example, that creates like a more traumatic effect, that it just takes so many times, because now that you cannot see anything, right, the attributes can also be seen in OO's world as well. But like I said, it's just mutually, very, very mutually exclusive. You have a progressive world that does not put beauty standard as a standard when it comes to romantic relationships, because now what they look into is that guys that are loving, caring, it's not about looks anymore, we're not living in the 19th centuries anymore. We're living in a world where a lot of the society are progressive and is very much aware of how much relationship is fundamental, proud to oppose.
Thank you for the speech. Now I'd like to welcome the Deputy Prime Minister to continue the debate. Here.
Hey, just give me 20 seconds. Hey, am I audible?
Yes, you are, whenever you're ready.
Okay. I'll start by rebutting the opposition's case and then move on further to explain the points we have in our case. They started by saying that we need to prove that there are some sort of, why this kind of a world is absolutely needed, where everyone's face physically looks the same. So first of all, that is not our burden. Our burden today is to prove that we'd simply prefer to live in a world where everyone's face looks the same, given that it is possible, right? So if we prove to you that our world is better, or it's better for the individual and better for the society, or it just creates a simply more peaceful world in general, then we can win this. Okay, then they go ahead and talk to us about how people can still be discriminated on their body, on their clothes, and things like this. So first of all, what is the difference between these characteristics and a person's face? You don't have control over the face you're born with. We believe that any sort of discrimination regarding something that you're not born with is something that is unjustified principally, and that's why we believe it would make a much better world where everyone has the same looking face. Now obviously discrimination will exist in other forms too, like religion, gender. These sort of discriminations will exist in society, but in our model, in our world, we are doing away with at least one kind of discrimination. So if you compare it with the other kind of world, we believe our world is a better one. Now then they went on to talk about how objectification will be more in our case, because now you will focus more on a person's body. So this is mischaracterized because a person's face is an equal measure of the person's attractiveness as the body, right? Faces are extensively objectified too, and that is exactly why we have so many beauty standards existing in our society right now. Like if you imagine a really hot woman or something, right, and you imagine the face of Donald Trump, do you think you're still going to be attracted or see the woman the same way? So like a person's face is equally a part of their sexuality, can be interpreted sexually as their body, and that is why we believe objectification is going to be lesser in our case, since everyone now has the same face. Then they went on to talk about how a person's face is not their I'll take POIs later. They talked about how a person's face is a part of their identity and adds to their uniqueness, which we believe is again false, because you don't have the kind of control, any kind of control with the face that you're born in. It's something designated to you by birth, and how does that prove what sort of a person you are? How can that be a metric by which your worth is decided? But in our model, what happens now? You value more substantial things about people. You value their personality, you value their sense of humor or their smartness or what kind of a person they are over their face value. And that is why I believe it's important to distinguish between a person's appearance, a facial appearance, and their intrinsic value as a human being. Also, like they talked about people embracing their beauty. You can embrace your beauty in other ways. You can embrace the good things about yourself. You can embrace all the good qualities you have. Like if you're a good mother, if you're a good friend, if you have confidence in yourself. These are the things that we believe make you unique and worthy of loving yourself, not just your face. We believe also loving yourself can exist in our model too. If your face looks like everyone else's, why aren't you capable of loving your face, right? That can exist in our model too. Then they told you about how it can affect future relationships. First of all, we don't believe it's necessary that you will always associate a person with their face, given that in this world everyone has the same face. So necessarily you will end up associating, if you had an abusive father, maybe you will always associate those thoughts with the smell or the cologne your father wore, right, or the kind of clothes he wore. So it's not necessary that you'll always remember him by his face. And even if that happens, we'll prove to you why this has more benefit on our side, right? And the fringe case that they talk about does not hold up. What are the points that we talked to you about? Now, side opposition dismissed how beauty standards exist today by saying that feminist movement is striving to tell you that everyone is equal and we shouldn't judge people by beauty. But let me tell you, like Hollywood and all other film industries alike, even today, are very strict about their beauty standards, and people face discrimination regarding their beauty. And this has been talked to you about by RPM. What am I going to tell you? First, I'm going to talk to you about how healthier relationships will be formed in general. Because now when you are in a romantic relationship, what do you value about the other person? You value their personality. You value the intrinsic things that they have acquired through their life, right, through their life experiences. You value their brain, or you value the kind of person they are, or the values, the principles they have, the moral principles. This is how we're going to build healthier relationships, right, where you're not attracted to a person just based on face value or how they look, where you genuinely value the things about a person that you should be valuing. And this is going to lead to long-term stable relationships and better trust among people in general. And relationships are not going to be based about superficial things. And this is where we believe that we can curb objectification to a huge level. Now let's talk about an important thing that is going to happen on our side. What necessarily happens when you look around and every other human being looks on the face looks like you? First of all, we believe this is going to create some sort of built-in empathy in you towards everyone you see around you. This is what is going to be the psychological effect on people, and why we believe it's good, right? Because necessarily, let's talk. It's going to prevent a lot of crimes, or it's going to prevent a lot of wrongdoings that some people do towards other people. Let's consider a person who's resentful towards society for some reason. Now, why in our model this person will not go ahead and impulsively hurt someone else, right? Because it is going to trigger your conscience even more when you try to attack another person. And then you see that this person shares the exact same face that you share, or the people you love share, right? And it makes you realize on a fundamental level that you are all humans, and basically you start associating everyone with yourself. So before you harm someone, or before a criminal society goes ahead and does something wrong to another person, they are triggered to think once again, and it hits their conscience. And this is something we believe society today lacks. It's the empathy. It's this feeling of understanding towards someone else, trying to question that how would I feel if someone did the same to me? Kids being racist towards one another, right? And not just kids, even in the adult world, why people are racist towards one another, because sorry, because they think that because their faces are different, even they on human levels are extremely different people. How now for criminals, it's harder for you to go ahead and rape someone, because the moment you try to force yourself on someone, you see the same face you see every day in the mirror. You see the same face that your mother has or your sister has. How it's going to be harder for you to go and throw acid on someone's face, right? Because you it triggers your conscience, because it's the face that you have seen all around you, even the people you love and share good memories with. So, and we believe that people in general um, always have someone or they love generally in their lives, right? Unless you're like a complete misanthrope. But generally, when we talk about people at large, we talk about people who have healthy relationships with someone or the other, and that's why it's harder for these people to go ahead and do these crimes. Or that's why we believe it's going to create a more healthier world, healthier relationships, where people trust one another, people feel empathetic towards one another, and it creates a society based on love and harmony. And that's why we believe this is a better world than theirs, and we would prefer this world. Thank you. Proud to propose.
Thank you for the fine speech. Now I'd like to welcome Deputy Op Leader to continue the case for side opposition. You hear it.
Before I move on to strengthen Aimi's argumentation about the importance of identity and the transition from a collective society towards individualistic society that will occur in opposition a government world, let me clarify to you several and significant mistakes that opening government has committed into this debate. Firstly, prime ministers stand and told us that look, we want to remove any sort of discrimination and we want to fight the pretty privilege, citing the example of glorification of macho men and prettiest women in movies and advertisement. But firstly, as Aimi has rightly pointed out, is that those kind of privilege will still exist because it only alters the faces. You still have a specific standard that society impose on body shapes on who should be the hero on particular movie. Those individuals are the ones who have a lot of muscles and a tough body, or who should be the heroine or the feminine uh, roles of that movie. Those are those people that have fair skin and a slim body. So we think that all in all, at best, their kind of chain of causation between advertisement towards teenagers committing suicide will still occur because of the lack of clarification on opening government on this kind of privilege on their side. But secondly, they told us that teenagers, Prime Minister specifically told us that teenagers are the main stakeholders that we need to emphasize into this debate, where in fact they never touch upon the relationship that you will have among family members, the relationship that you will have with your colleagues at work, strangers you meet at coffee shop and whatnot. But even if this is true, we don't think that it is analyzed to the extent that we can buy the idea that these teenagers will be irrational as they grow older, because as you grow older, there are other considerations that you will take as a consideration to pick your another partner. For example, when the jobs, when you have jobs and when you have kids and you live together with them in a long period, the importance of sex will be much more less significant because you are more attracted to a person's personality, whether they are soft spoken to you, whether they care about you, whether they help you during house calls and whatnot. So we think that even if it is true that teenagers are important, this problem will be significantly mitigated in the end of the day. But thirdly, they told us about uh they told us in response to Aimi's argument about how like people will suffer traumatic experience, and they told us that, oh look, these people will not like associate face with their previous abusers when they meet someone. Instead, they will associate it with smell or clothes. This assumes that the same father that abuse you daily wear the same clothes every day. But secondly, it assumes that human capability to smell something will be as good as dogs or any kind of other animals. We don't think that's the case. But even if that's the case, we think that the illustration or the descriptive value that a photograph has in portraying the kind of faces that you will see is much more impactful than rather sense or smell and whatnot. So all in all, at most, opening government can argue about, like, at best, their case is that, oh, look, there is a reduced form of kind of discrimination that will not exist in their world. But we need to emphasize and we need to realize that these benefits come at the cost of the incapability for people to form a relationship among a lot of groups of people. The incapability of people to socialize and interact with other people in the end of the day. And Aimi, in her argumentation, has specifically told this because when you meet future teachers, partners, friends, colleagues that you want to bond with, you want to make a create a personal relationship with, you will see the same faces of men who sexually assaulted you, partners who cheated on you, and fathers who beat you during childhood. So we don't think that, okay, at best, maybe the persons who we are talking about are not like extreme cases, but as we grow old, you will experience kind of failed relationship. So our harm will still materialize because their trauma of being cheated upon by the same person with the same face. Because we need to understand how human mind works. Because we tend to associate things, that simple things, with past experience. And this is exceptionally true when you are talking about victims of rape, where when they look a person wearing a mask, they reminisce and remember the past experience of them being raped by someone who wear a mask. Or, for example, domestic abuse who were abused by her fathers, looking into lashes of whips and belt and whatnot. Or person who was cheated and abused in a particular relationship, when they see their pictures together, they associate it with the future partners in the end of the day. So what is the harm that we feel that is much more important for us to avoid than the marginal harm of pretty privilege that actually are not that important and are not that mitigated as opening government wants. So what are the harm? Firstly, on the individual level, is that it force people to be more individualistic, more afraid to form a relationship because they feel they don't want to experience the trauma simply by looking into other people's face. And they feel constant feeling of insecurity. They feel unsafe because they always look into the faces of the because offenders of sexual assault. But secondly, on the societal level, it will create a more individualistic society where the trust, it will create an untrustworthy society in the end of the day. So we think that to assess this debate and to reimagine the world that we really want to live in, it is insufficient for us to only rely on one marginal benefit, one aspect of teenagers, one aspect of pretty privilege, but at the same time neglecting other bigger parts of the debate that actually not only touch one stakeholders, but a lot of stakeholders, your families, your friends, and other future persons that might be meaningful to you, but in the government world will be meaningless.
All right, thank you for the speech. Now I'd like to welcome the member of government to start the government side. Here.
Oh yeah, just give me 5 seconds.
Whenever you're ready.
Yeah. Just a sec. If closing opposition had paid attention to the characterization that was painted by a gov member, they would not have run the case that they had, right? So, for example, when a gov member characterizes the exclusivity of beauty in this particular motion by talking about how it's completely out of your control, and even if it is to some extent, it heavily depends on your financial ability, it heavily depends on your class, it heavily depends how much you can afford certain surgeries, etc., which highly overlaps, which means like two different lottery of birth parameters continue to function together to determine your fate in a particular world, right? Which is to say that beauty existing and you not having control over it makes it an exclusive parameter as compared to other personality traits that the closing opposition wants to talk about, right? Which is to say that why other personality traits are something which cannot be developed, which cannot be dictated by the society as beauty is, right? Firstly, understand simply because there's a lot of complexity when you talk about personality between people, right? Which is to say that if you like a certain book and if you like a certain music, there is so much multidimensionality and complexity that people cannot simply have like defined hierarchies as they can do in the sense of beauty, right? How you can define certain beauty parameters, how you can define like certain skin colors in very objective ways, and can easily classify people into being good looking and not being good looking, right? We tell you like it's not easy for even a human brain to like take that amount of complexity and to make hierarchies out of that to even like exclude individuals, apart from the fact that apart from the already analyzed argument from us at the house that how even if like some individuals are say more smart, other people have more every day to be more hardworking to like undo that kind of damage and essentially have more opportunity to self-actualize them in the world in comparison to other traits, something which they don't have when beauty exists as a metric, right? With that, let's summarize a case and compare opening government and closing government, right? Like, firstly, understand that we have given a better characterization in terms of what lottery of birth actually means, this particular motion, how biases are formed, and why that particular bias, which actually stems from like the first sensory input that you get from an individual, is something which heavily determines what you think of that individual and why that essentially masks other attributes of personality, right? We don't think opening government has given that. Secondly, understand we have given you the idea of how good you look, etc., overlaps with what class you belong to. Again, it's problematic how social narratives how the social narratives that dictate who is good looking and not good looking essentially is controlled only by a particular community, which always gets upper hand in this particular world, right? Which is to say the reason why like certain traits in like Asians or blacks are not considered to be good looking is because most of the narratives are drawn by Hollywood, which is extremely populated by like white feminists, actresses, right? So secondly, understand like even if like self-esteem is something, if you buy to the idea of self-esteem, etc., we tell you like at an individual level this world is better off, right? So firstly, understand the self-esteem argument from us at the house, right? So first of all, if an individual does not want to prioritize beauty and is simply interested in something else because of the beauty existing in hierarchical structures as it does right now, that this person has more propensity to go forward and look after her beauty, right? And spend resources in that direction, which we think is better spent in other aspects of this person, which means this person itself can be better off when she does not take into consideration beauty as a parameter itself which exists on our house. Secondly, understand at an introspection level and an individual, right, where you don't know whether something is bad in your personality or whether it's how you look, right? We tell you in a world where this confusion does not exist, where you can actually introspect as to what are the problems and flaws in you which you can actually improve, is a better world because you can simply go forward and introspect, which means more individual development on us at the house, right? So understand, like, opening opposition cannot run the case that you will not have the ability to appreciate differences, etc., right? Because this ability to appreciate differences between people who look different comes at a very big cost, something which we have analyzed, right? So let's understand what impacts we have shown you, which OG has clearly not, right? We have told you like how no POI. We have told you how, like, for example, cultural appropriation happens in terms of like how Asians look or how black people look, and all of this, right? In all of the cost involved in all of this is essentially the confidence of a lot of these individuals, which determines the kind of attention that they pay in their other personality traits, etc., right? We tell you like this is a heavy cost to pay given the kind of marginal benefits that opposition talks about, right? We tell you like in our world where like individuals at job interviews, for example, are not judged on the basis of how they look, we tell you more optimized world exists on us at the house simply because more capable people get to do what they really are good at instead of an arbitrary factor like beauty, which has nothing to do with how good you are at a particular job, right? Which essentially makes it different from any other parameter. At best case scenario, IQ on the side of opposition, which is to say that a narrative which like determines your job, which does not have anything to do with it, is something which we clearly disagree with, which means lesser optimized world on their side of the house, right? Secondly, understand like what we tell you, which opening government again misses, right? How like the dismissal, what is the essential trade-off in the debate, right? One, like how like some people getting fulfillment out of feeling beautiful versus beauty not existing as a parameter as a whole, right? Firstly, understand beauty as a comparative is not something which everybody is comfortable, right? Which is to say that if your pursuit of happiness and fulfillment is determined is comes out of like you being more beautiful, it's not sustainable, right? Which is to say that if you want to live in a world where fulfillment comes from the way you look, we tell you that that goes off at a certain age, which is to say that if you don't get fulfilled, which is to say that on the comparative in our world, if a person derives fulfillment from the kind of personality that he really has, we tell you that is more sustainable in the long run and stays with him, and it's not something which he questions at a particular point of time, that now I don't look any good any longer, what is my identity and whether or not I deserve to be happy anymore, right? Secondly, understand the principle itself is problematic to say that people should be happy from something which they didn't have control or any sort of credit over, right? We tell you like people should be rewarded on the basis of something which they actually go forward and work for and earn that, right? We tell you all of that does not happen, right? Lastly, fourthly, understand like why human relationship argument was something also not analyzed on the side opening government, right? So understand like when there exists an asymmetry between humans, asymmetry in humans in terms of like one being like more good looking and the other person not being so, we tell you there are compromises made by the individual who is not as good looking, right? Which means like lesser understanding exists between human relationship because you simply fear that this individual will leave you even when you do not deserve him, or because he or she looks very good, right? We tell you all of these parameters do not exist, and individuals necessarily bond over how they feel about the personalities and how comfortable they are with each other rather than the societal narrative, which means better human relationship exists on us at the house, right? Second, lastly, understand judging based on looks, right? This is something which is not binary, something which you have proved, right? When you perceive an individual in the for the first time and develop a particular opinion, you tend to see that person through the same lens all over again and again, right? Which is to say that you do not give like equal credit to personalities, which is to say that both understanding of personalities and judging based on first looks cannot exist differently in both worlds and cannot be mutually exclusive, which is why very, very proud to propose.
Thank you for the speech. Now I'd like to welcome the opposition whip to conclude the debate. Here.
Can everyone hear me? All right.
Yep.
Throughout the course of my speech, I'm going to come and tell you why the government bench doesn't stand to take anything in this debate. And even though there might be certain harms, which we do on a like realistic level agree, right? We think that there are certain harms, but why these harms are going to continuously going to exist if they take up this model on their side of the house, and why this is going to lead to like a much worse off situation. At the same time, we'll also fulfill the kind of impact Uvo was trying to talk to you about, right? We'll get to this right now. If government bench thinks that they want to take up the burden that like if the burden that having same kinds of faces will allow you to like have and support different kinds of personalities, you need to ask yourself if they've come and proved to you whether these different kinds of personalities will exist, right? The harms of them not doing such a thing is going to lead to society coming up with like a standard, like just like how society came up with like a standard of what beauty in itself is, right? We think that's going to come up with like in terms of like a standard in terms of what your personality can be, which means society in itself is shaping what the idea of perfect personality is. And this is so much more harmful in the world, which they haven't really engaged upon, nor proved to us that personality is something that will be as diverse as you think, right? The idea that we might member of opposition ran here is that you really can't change your face, which means you go ahead and accept your face and like develop your personality around that, right? But what do you think is like what do you think is changeable, right? Personalities like as general ideas of like people going ahead and showing different kinds of personality traits to different kinds of people. It's very easy for people to go ahead and change the kind of personality that they want in order to live up the kind of idea of like how an ideal personality is, right? The reason why we're talking so much about personality is because of the government bench large emphasis on how this personality shall pan out, right? Just think about this. They come and tell us that personality cannot will still continue to be like diverse, right? We think that's not the case. We think it's going to be manipulated to an extent where like like you as society are able to dictate the person that you have to behave in an X way to do Y things, right? Which means the way you react to different kinds of like different situations is so inherent to you that it makes the beauty of humanity in itself, right? Which means the moment in which you're able to take away your face, you are now developing a standard for yourself, which is in terms of like how your personality is what matters, right? And the idea that we're trying to run here is that like the society in itself tells you what a good person in itself is, right? Which means you as an individual are not able to like think about and like develop the kind of personality in which you're able to shape what the idea of goodness is, right? In their world, you live in a society where like the idea of goodness and like the idea of like a good personality is just limited to like probably like maybe one or two best cases. At the same time, in our world, you're like able to understand and diversify the different kinds of good personalities that exist with consideration to our personality in itself, which is inherent to that individual, which he's allowed to dictate, right? The fact in which this becomes true is because of my member of opposition's characterization, where she comes and explains to you like how the idea of identity is tied to them, right? Which means the people in itself are able to shape their identity based on the kind of personalities that the personalities based on the kind of identity that they represent, right? The idea in itself is to come down to this. Now, let's like answer certain major clashes in the debate. Why are the personalities more likely to be true, which comes exclusively from closing opposition, right? As against opening government's analysis model, where they talk about like how they want long-term relationships when your personality is anything like your personality is something that they want to concentrate on and like get you the kind of long-term relationship. And I think as against like closing government's model, where they tell you like the idea is based like where your idea is based on personalities. But the problem with all of these cases in itself is that now the kind of personality that you actually are living up to is not yourself. It's something that's fake, which means that even if you want a truer relationship that's not based on looks, you're literally living in a world which has fake relationships, which is based on fake personalities, right? Which means you're never given the kind of opportunity that you want to look into the kind of person that you want to develop, right? But when you actually have your looks inherent with you and like develop your own personality, we think that leads to a much better relationship because you are able to go beyond the looks over the course of how relationships progress, right? And that in itself becomes a super cool world to live in our side of the house. Two, in terms of like why my member thinks that this is going to lead to a super happy world, right? We think we go ahead and accept your looks, right? Like maybe like opening opposition talks about this. But the point at which we give you the analysis in terms of like how you're more able to develop your personality, where you as an individual can think about the way you want to perceive yourself to the world and like develop the way you want to react to the world. We think individuals are much more happier than having a constant narrative, which comes from a member of opposition exclusively, where she comes and tells you that this narrative is something that you are forced to live up to, right? Because it's so much more easier for you to change. And the way you're actually living is something that you don't want to be true to yourself, which means that the kind of world you're living in is not dictated by the kinds of benefits that you want. The problem with CG's world is that they talked about like how healthy standards are going to exist in order to increase social mobility, right? But the problem here is now you're actually, in order to solve your entire problem of healthy standards, you're now creating an entire unhealthy, toxic environment where you're literally not able to differentiate between the different kinds of people that are there, right? Because everyone wants to live up and aspire to the kind of perfect personality that they want, which means that the entire idea that we're trying to run here is that the personality becomes super fake. You live in a world where it's like literally where you're stuck in a school where literally everything is the same thing and you're not able to differentiate within itself. You're stuck in a place where you can't move out, and this leads to such a monotonous society where individuals are so much more unhappy because now they think that this is the way they're supposed to live in, right? Here's where we'll get to more analysis. In more analysis, right? We think personalities are more truer in our world as against OG's model, where the only thing that they talk about is like the benefit of long-term relationships, right? We think the idea of long-term relationships should be allowed to be dictated by these individuals who have different personalities, and if their personalities are incapable of like compatible with each other, we think that's not a world you want to live in, right? Which is why like my members' next important extensions and points become very important in this debate, because now we come and talk to you about like how there exists like organic social barriers, which means that even if you're able to like have healthy standards as opposition claims, this entire standard is based on like still the obsession with organic factors, right? Which means organic factors such as how rich you were or how like whatever other factors that society like you are able to like get over other people is what's going to like shape you in itself, right? Which means that one person with a boring personality is able to access a job over another person with a boring personality, which is literally not his, and is so fake that this person like and this entire thing is that why this first person is able to access this is because of the terms of money that he had, right? Which means because of his financial capabilities, he's able to access such resources. It literally disenfranchises the entire set of people in their model, right? We've also spoken to you about like how mobility is better off, right? Your looks and identity shape your personality, which like pan out in different kinds of ways. Your personality has been given exclusive importance when you have to develop as yourself as a person, right? Because your decisions are shaped by your personalities, because it's inherent to the way you react, right? The idea that my member of opposition was talking about is that you won't really have a world in which Jack Ma's exists because he was never like, because you didn't allow him to like develop the kind of personality that he should, right? Which means his personality and his business was so successful because of the way he was able to like look at business from a much more humanized perspective based on his experiences, right? In their model, you do not get you live in a world where like everyone is monotonous and everyone is literally so sad that you can't do anything about it.
Reflection.
All right, thanks for the speeches, guys. Thanks for the debate. We're gonna discuss and then we're gonna go back and give you the results. But